Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and I have a treat to work on yet again today. This one is, we're going to work on a vintage reel. And this reel is the Bronson Mercury number 2550. And before we get started on that, a little bit of history about this. So Bronson was a reel company in Bronson, Michigan. And it was in business from about 1921 to about 1972. So it had a 50-year run of producing fishing reels. This one was one of their classics, the Mercury. It was actually introduced around 1938. And then this version is the version 2, and it's actually version 3. But the first one did not have the engraved fishing scenes on it. The second one had the fishing scenes. And then somewhere around 1950 they changed this oil cap from the jeweled cap to the chrome cap. So that's ways of dating the reel. So we know this is a 1950s or later example of that. The other thing about it is it's a 2550. The 2551 was a narrower spool, but the same kind of engineering in the gear side plate. This one, as you can tell, it's got most of its grease is lost. It's been lost throwing it out from the holes inside the reel into the side plate, and as you might imagine, a little tough to turn. Well, we're going to see if we can't fix all of that. And to do that, we're going to take this reel apart. I'll show you how it was made. We'll show you the key service points. We'll try to clean this up a little bit and hopefully restore this to its former glory. Some of the things that you notice on these older reels from time to time is this handle will just seize. You won't be able to turn that handle crank knob. That's because the material it was made from, I think it might have been Bakelite, but it might have been plastic, that swells to the shaft. And of course, in swelling, it just chokes down on that shaft, and well, there's nothing you can do to loosen that up. All right, let's get started. As we get started, we're going to take the side plate apart, take it off the reel, service the internals, find out why this reel is as stiff as it is. And while I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to my channel, please use that notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting videos, and you can see, well, if it's one that you would like to watch. When I remove my pieces and parts, I put them into a parts tray. That was the screw cover cap for the handle. Now the handle can come off. And because this is, hasn't been paid attention to in a while, I'm just going to try and clean some of this up. I'm using a 4-0 steel wool. That's the very fine steel wool. It's not very aggressive in terms of a bite or anything. And it does help to grab the dirt and junk on here and kind of polish it off. There is a little bit of chrome polish on this steel wool, so it's not just a pure steel wool. And that polish is it's an automotive product. It's termed Turtle Wax's chrome polish, which kind of just reminds me I probably should put a little bit more on there. That just kind of permeates the steel wool, makes it a little bit easier in terms of the cleanup on that. Okay, the handle is clean. We're going to put that into the box. Now you can see the scene on here. We have a fisherman in a motorboat, a very early motorboat, and we have the second one netting a catch here, and I guess that's the sun in the back over a forest. Pretty little engraving scene. I believe that the plating on this would have been called German silvering, and it helped to protect it. I'm going to remove the two side plate screws that are holding this on. I'm going to use a micro driver for that because there's a very small slot in that, and you do need to match the slot of your screwdriver to the side plate of the reel. This should come off now. We can see the internals on this one. We have a main gear set up. We also have a little drive gear here, and we have the spool. Let's see if we can't get the spool out. I'm thinking if I remove the pawl now, we have a pawl cover here that I should be able to slide that worm gear out. And then we could do our job of cleaning this all up. There is a cover that holds the pawl in on this. That's the cover screw. And this is a good place to tell you to take pictures. If you're unfamiliar with the setup of the reel, if you haven't worked on one in a while, if you're a little bit nervous that maybe you're not going to make it work the way it should work, then I recommend that you take the pictures. There's an innovation on this. This reel will show you in just a moment. We're going to try and get that pawl out. That's the innovation. Just going to tap it down, see if we can't grab that. It's a little tough. It's been living in there for a while. That's probably one of the reasons, or one of the causes, why it's running poorly. Let's see if we can put a little penetrating oil in there or something. I'm trying to grab it. It's just being stubborn. I guess it has its right after all of these years. There we go. We got it out. Here's your innovation. You have a double-sided pawl. So what it would happen is if you broke the teeth on one side, you were able to turn that over to the other side and use the second set of pawl. Well, this one, other than being dirty, seems to have the pawl working, and it seems to be in good condition. What I'm doing here is I'm scraping off the grease on the shoulders of the pawl. You can see the chunks coming off. Maybe you can't. It might be a little bit difficult to see. I can see it. And that's because the grease is dried onto the shoulders of the pawl on both sides, both the spare side as well as the working side. Let's put it on that paper towel. You'll be able to see it better. Well, what happens with that is that clogs the tracks of the worm gear, and it doesn't turn as easily. And well, when it doesn't turn easily, that's another reason to bog down the reel. Let's see if we can remove this now. We can. We'll pull the worm gear out, and we'll pull the line guide out. That should just drop out. And now we can clean the gears and the frames. This gear doesn't appear to have any grease in there holding it up, but we're going to use a penetrating oil to loosen it and a hard brush to pull off, just to make sure that if there is anything clogging those tracks. And we saw some on the pawl, but we'll just make sure that we clean that up, and we can inspect that to see that looks like a fine gear. Same thing here. We can see all the dirt and dried grease that has leaked out over time, so we want to do our best to kind of clean that up. All those dried greases, while they just harbor a lot of contaminants and debris, and when they get to the point where they don't want to live on the metal anymore and they start falling off, well, in this case it can fall into the tracks of the worm gear. And well, if it falls into the tracks of the worm gear, it's going to clog it, and again, we're going to have lousy performance because of it. Well, I was reading a little note. It came from Orca. I belong to Orca. It's the old Reel Collectors Association. I was doing a little bit of research before I started to jump into this reel. That's where I learned about the 2551. I don't think I've ever seen that one. But one of the things that I did note in there was that at the height of the production of this Mercury reel, they were making 9,000 of these a day. So that's quite a telling story about the popularity of the reel, and also about the numbers that are out there. So it's not unusual for you to find a Bronson Mercury if you're looking for one. These were quite popular. As I mentioned, the first version of it was actually somewhere in the late 1930s. According to Orca, they found it in the 1938 catalog, but there were no 37 or 38 catalogs from Bronson, so they're unsure if it was introduced earlier or if that was the first year. But regardless, these are beautiful reels all around. Again, this one's from the 1950s, based on that chrome cap on the back. Okay, did a nice job of cleaning up the interior of the line guide. I'm going to use a kitchen scrubby and some rod and reel cleaner to see what we can do about cleaning up the residual grease on the rest of this. The rod and reel cleaner is a Penn product, and it's actually pretty good. I mean, I use it. I wouldn't use it if I didn't think it was doing what it should be doing. But it seems to dissolve a lot of the greases, and it seems that there's a polish in here as well. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 there. A lot of this grease is, well, it's just film. It's all kinds of things that can happen to a reel that's just sitting for a while. And we're doing our best to try and restore this as we can. I'm going to use that penetrating oil as a degreaser or a solvent here. Get around that click button. And anywhere there's a hole to the outside, it's going to weep out. I get the question frequently, how often should I service my reel? And my response generally is once a year. And well, just for this reason, greases harden if you leave them unserviced. Greases weep out and the reel becomes dry. There's a host of reasons why an annual service makes it a good idea. Even if you're not fishing the reel, it is a good idea to keep them serviced. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with the results of this. A little bit more on this side here. Seems like no matter how much you clean, you can always find another little spot to clean. While I'm doing that, I want to encourage you to ask questions. If you have any questions, it doesn't have to be on this reel, it can be on any reel. If I can help you, I'll try to do that. That's the whole idea behind Second Chance Tackle, is to kind of transfer knowledge and skills and the like, teach you how to service the reels yourself, and how to keep your reels going, and, well, how to give some reels a second chance. And there's one a little bit more on this side I can do in terms of a cleaning too. All right, let's just finish this up and we'll get back to servicing the reel, and hopefully we'll make this one, I can't say good as new. It's never going to be as good as new, but hopefully it'll be working up to its potential. All right, get that out of there. Dry this up. I do use the paper towel. I like to keep the dirt off my workbench as best I can. And here you can see a nice clear shot then of the Bronson Mercury. So if you pick up a reel like this and you say, gee, I'm looking on the outside, I can't find anything, don't be surprised if it's sitting on the inside there. Or if you're in a situation, I know some fly reels out there like the Fluger Medalist have it in the rim. So just be patient, take a look. All right, this looks very much like the gear set on a Shakespeare. Whoa. Well, that's the reason why it's not performing well either. That came out very hard. We'll do the same thing. We're going to use the penetrating oil to loosen some of that grease. Now we'll wipe that down with a paper towel. I'll try and get most of that out of there. I'm feeling a ridge. You probably can't see it. I'm feeling a ridge where the outer gear was running. And while I'm sure that was one of the reasons why it was as tight as it was. When these reels have greases that dry out, it becomes like a glue. And we've all kind of been there with the hardened greases and the like. And, well, that's what will happen here as well. All right, just a little bit more on the rim here, and I think we're going to be good. Yeah, okay, much better. And then I'm going to use the kitchen scrubby again on this side to do what we can do here as well. It's doing a nice job of cleaning it up. Again, a cotton swab where you can't reach often will help you get into some of those tighter spots. And, well, you can do a pretty good job there in terms of cleaning it up as well. All right, we're done with this side. We're done with this side. And got a nice sharp point on that click tongue. I'm going to oil the clicker. I'm going to use some fishing wheel grease. This is Penn's wheel grease, so for those wanting to know. I'm going to use my artist brush and put just a dab of grease where that spool shaft is going to go. Check your spool, make sure that's all cleaned. This has a little line saver on it, but you don't have to use as much line because that little buffer there is going to just take up the space that line would normally take up. Back in the day, remember what we're saying, this is the early 1950s, this reel, but the reel itself was actually designed in the 30s and 40s. Braid was not cheap. So if you could save yourself some braided line, and this reel was typically used in fresh water, it was typically used in shallow depths, so you didn't need 300 yards of line on this reel. And if you could save loading up that line underneath there with a spacer like this, well, you could line more reels with what you purchased. Okay, there we go. I think we did a good job on that. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my brush that has the grease on it, just a little bit of grease onto the stud. We're going to put that into the carrier. And I probably could have left that out because I probably should have done this as well. We've cleaned up our line guide and worm gear. I'm going to hook that line guide back in now. We'll bring the worm gear over and put a little dab of grease just on the stud here where it's going to go. And bring that in. When I bring that in, you need to bring it through the hole in the line guide. Then you need to seat it into the hole in the case on the other side, like that. Now we can find our double-sided pawl. In this case, both sides of that pawl were in good condition, so it doesn't matter which side you put in. And we can insert that into the carrier. Shouldn't have turned that down. There you go. Well, one of the things you just learned there is you need to be patient. And don't panic. If something goes oops, just kind of come back. You'll have the time to fix it. I just was working on a Shakespeare reel. And that had a clip that was holding the line guide in place. I guess my mind must have said, oh, you'll have another clip there. All right, we're putting that pawl back into the hole now. You're going to notice on this cap that there is a bump, and that bump pretty much corresponds with the arc in the pawl. Well, I put the pawl in. I'm going to put a drop of oil in there. And then let's turn it to make sure that the line guide is moving before we put that cover back on. And it is moving. Okay. We can take the cover then, place that over it. It seems like every time it wants to go rest, I lose the pieces. Okay, I'm using a micro screwdriver for these screws because, well, they're very small slots. And sometimes I need to use a little bit of grease there to hold that screw while I'm trying to set it. As I mentioned, when you put that down, you tend to lose that spot there. Let's see if we can get this. Looks like we're in pretty good condition there. Okay. It says patent applied for, but I don't see a date there. Make sure that when you do this that the cover is all the way down and tight against that carrier. The other thing we can do here is we can take some grease and put that onto the spool gear or the pinion gear. There's also a little bit of grease you can put onto the drive for the worm gear. All right, you can set that aside. We have the cover. We've cleaned the cover. We have grease on that brush. We can just put a little bit where the spool is going to anchor on this side. And if you like, just a little bit inside that place where the main gear is going to come through. I think that's going to come out in 2 pieces. It is. I'm going to notice that this is the side that goes outward on that stem. I'm going to do the same thing because this is what was, in my opinion, we'll find out, kind of bogging down the performance of the reel. One of the things that is of beauty here is the materials. This, I believe, is a pure brass marine grade gear. Well, you just kind of don't see that anymore. All right. I think this is a washer sitting on top here. Probably is. I'm not going to disturb it. It's also another way to tell which was going where. All right, we've taken care of that. We're going to do the same thing here with the 4/0 steel wool. We're just using that to polish the shaft and to remove any old greases and the like. Okay. Should be in good condition there. Check the teeth. Now these aren't clogged. If they were clogged, I'm going to put this back in. But if the teeth were clogged, you would use that brush again, like we did with the worm gear, and pull through to knock out any residual greases and dirt and the like. Okay, we've got the gear reassembled, cleaned. I'm going to put some new grease on there. And for those of you who haven't tried servicing a vintage reel like this, I would encourage you to do that. Even if you have no use for the reel itself, you can generally find these around. They're not that expensive, particularly something like this Bronson Mercury where they've made tens of thousands of them, probably hundreds of thousands of them. It's always good to take the time to try to work something like this just to learn from it, to see how the mechanics work behind it. All right, the handle goes on. I'm holding the gear. I like to put the handle on before I go back and install that side plate. And the reason for that is the handle just floats in that case, and sometimes you have room in the back of that case. And if you don't install that handle, you're going to wind up pushing that gear in and you won't have that tag end to install the handle to. When I do that, I want to tighten this nut as much as I can with my hand and then just finish it. Okay, turn that. Oh, that's turning a lot easier. All right, we've got a couple of things going on now. I want to move this over to the side just so that I don't pinch anything in the process. I think we should be in good condition. So let's find the 2 holes where the screws are going to go. The seam goes to the bottom of the reel. Just merge it. Bring that in. And then you can turn that handle just to make sure that the gears are meshed. I'm trying to find a hole for this. There it is, I think. If you use an awl like that, it will help you align the holes. And then you want to make sure that the seam that you have on the reel is nice and tight all the way around. You don't want to force the closure of that cap. You want to make sure that it's kind of resting naturally there. All right. Well, we're getting close. I'm going to go ahead and put this on. They're long screws, but they're short duration for turning. I want to put a little bit of oil onto the worm gear track here. And well, there's pretty much nothing left other than a quick cleanup of the grease that I may have transferred from my hand. And let's give it a test. Let's see how we did. Oh, look at that. Nice and smooth and easy turning. You have an adjuster on here on both sides. If you need to speed it up, loosen that up. If you want to slow it down, and this is all based on the weight that you have on the reel itself, the lure. Heavier lures, you want to slow the spool. Lighter lures, you can speed it up. All right, that's a beautiful little reel there. As I mentioned, the only defect in this reel at the moment is that these handles, well, you kind of have to let that spin on you rather than spin on the shaft because they've swollen and they've covered that up. Well, that's it. That's how you service a Bronson Mercury model 2550. Somewhere in the 1950s it was made, and it's well, it's ready to go fishing again as it has a second chance. Before I leave, I want to thank our police, fire, safety, and EMT workers and the like for all they do. And I want to encourage everyone to well, find these reels, work on the reels, learn from the reels, and then give them a second chance by taking them fishing. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.